Straight of Division 2, брат. Да ги банат. Не знам. 55 читера, брат. Ако не и повече.
We saw the reverse of last week where we saw the Shiny Shafts team actually W-keying the sort of Outlaw Oasis side of things in iDrop, Sky and Scroll. We saw them just being so mobile. Now I think it's going to be Lucy, Loki and QB who are going to be doing that.
Не сега, че трябва да имаш RNG с улта, ми трябва да имаш RNG да ни тъпушне някакъв читер, брат. Това е вече друг левел competitive scene. Те какви са, бе, брат? Какви са тия китайци, Asian players?
To watch in terms of eliminations and all-out fragging power, but I think AD and Hardfind and Co here, they're very much aware of the presence there of Lucy, Loki and QB. They're playing things very, very carefully. Again, Taco, it's these all which can
мапа просто. Намери го.
so difficult to navigate when you're a team.
Те така после може.
But Loki and Lucy, they are committed to this. Aiden, Hardfind, Michael, they're not convinced. Finally, they're going to get their chance, but it doesn't actually come to fruition here for QB. He's not going to be able to find any sort of an opening sequence. Instead, going to opt to just try and play the waiting game. But you have to remember, Minnie, one of these teams eliminations, and the other has absolutely nothing to their name. So you can only commit so much time before you have to start actually collecting surge damage to play out your mid game later on. And surge is going to be something that Cranky's not having too many difficulties finding, and he's got to clutch this one up because losing a teammate so early on, you just want to get as quickly as possible so you can start putting the pieces back together.
Yeah, nice to see there from Cranky. Cranky, who himself calls himself the new Peterbot. So, going to be looking into whether that is true today. Getting off to a decent enough start. Keep your eyes peeled on Cranky to see whether that could be true. But for Maxi Amos and these guys inside of that fight as well, difficult situation for all players. They're jumping on in. Cranky does find Elise right there. Really nice knock from him, but it's all just boiling over here. So many players inside of the box, and they do eventually fall.
Just an all-out brawl taking place, but these fringe positions on the map becomes all the more crucial for you to find that early surge because you have to expect teams as they're rotating inwards with some of these later zone pools.
Почти колкото FNCS Grand Finalist сама.
If we're talking about teams that know how to play clinical Fortnite, Ari, Seti, Cammy are always going to be leading the charge in that conversation, and with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, if you ask me, Minnie, because they know they have to perform this season.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we saw the analysts break it down.
Те къвто и ремикс даднат, то няма да се оправи. Никой няма да се върне в играта.
Very similar to that 2022 Invitational on the balloons, just stacking up those heals. Just allows them to trade that Storm Surge damage when they're going for shots. They can overpeak a little bit more. They can afford to take more damage. Of course, they need to get those heals from their uncontested drop spot, which is going to be very, very crucial for them. Vico, Veno, Flixie, not quite a fan of that Skyscraper.
Всички искаха да върнат OG-то, върнаха го и накрая нищо не стана. Защото играта е била много убита, брат, в сезон 1 и сезон 2. Защото не мога да се движиш. Просто хората в днешно време не са свикнали на такъв геймплей. Няма смисъл да играеш. Не е същото.
He's holding that left-hand peak, keeping an eye on all the surroundings, but no, he gets spotted out, he gets found out, and that's why he's retreating.
It's also Veno forfeiting that high ground overview that he'd initially had. Seems as if he might have suspected there was a little bit more company coming from an opposite way, but Loki, Lucy, QB talking about the fact that they needed to find their damage somewhere, and inside of the storm they will collect Zaro, but unfortunately, they still have a little bit of a ways to go here. Chap and Teeny, a lot of fighting power behind this team, and Vinos, unfortunately, on the receiving end of it. That's going to be one elimination in tow now for Chap's trio. A big one, in fact, because they still have a couple other trios rolling around the outskirts of Crime City.
Yeah, this is a dangerous trio. You don't want to be on the receiving end of a fight with these guys. They have that fragging power combined.
To rely on the black market resources, being able to buy numerous amounts of gold splashes. In QB's instances, we've watched them kind of just huddling up together for that campfire play. But these dead side rotations, while they can be optimal, you still have to remember you're having to keep tabs on the surge damage throughout, right? And ChatGPT wasting absolutely no time, just jumping straight from one engagement to the next. This time it's going to be Kifo who will be their next victim, and 3 eliminations now in tow for Chap's trio. It's definitely setting them up nicely. It's kind of
side of the map though, or YZY, Buzz and Abdul, all of these guys just on the edge. We have seen some fights in this sort of area. Of course, we talked about how Blaha, Mixon and Combat could be potentially on the receiving end of some queasy crossfire. But it does seem like they managed to evade that for now. Only 1 elimination for them. Maybe it was them that maybe took out Queasy earlier on. I think the bus path did go that way, so I can only imagine that would be the case, landing on top of the spawn, top of the bridge. But for these guys right now, their play style is going to be very, very consistent. It's going to be low ground. It's going to be making the most out of all of the games that they do make off spawn. Having that uncontested shining span is so, so important. Hopefully for them they can find some success.
just Sila fully previewing some of the woes that kind of take place when some of these teams are just navigating their way outside of the storm. Della, though, might even suspect that something is up here. Was not fully convinced that this building was abandoned by any means, and sure enough, Annex just running from Della straight into his next teammate, but he's at least going to take one with him, which is a surprising outcome. Still, it's not going to put too much of a halt here onto Bevies and Axe Force and Della. They'll be able to get that double revive off, no problem. It's more so what Pump is going to have to decide to do moving forward, and he's not the only one. QB, Lushi, they've made their way outside of that campfire, now find themselves essentially caught up here in the mix with Fury's trio, and Peshka does have a lone elimination. Fury trying to add another one to the count. QB so incredibly low, just trying to hold the wall for as long as possible. He needs somebody from his team to try and back him up, but there's no reinforcements coming through just yet. Finally, Peshka is going to be able to shut him down. QB taken out of the conversation. Lushi soon to follow. Just too much trail behind here, and that's going to be the prime opportunity for Fury's team to collapse on. They're not the only ones, though, the third-party engagements in mind.
Look at this, though, very, very sneaky from Zangi, Rickbor, and Zara. Looking to close on in here into this fight. Italians just trying to find any sort of angle to approach, but I think that the way that Craig, Fury, and Peshka fought that fight, it was very good. They didn't leave too many angles exposed for that third party. I think they could have finished it a little bit quicker. I'm sure they wouldn't mind with that, and they can actually get away in the truck there. So something that we might see a little bit of today. They are in play.
Аз съм мютнат. Викам, ако си квитнал за много време и си бил про, сигурно пак ще си про, независимо какво става. Ако не си бил някакъв бавно развиващ, като много на армия, примерно, защото та керил само еймота или някакви такива неща. Първо, ако Питър Бота квитне за 10 месеца и се върне, брат, според вас дали ще се плейсва топ 10 000 или топ 100 консистент?
A lot of gold splashes that we saw Risk holding on to. Frixie as well, playing from that elevated position. Abdul and Boobas as well as YZY, they're just trying to make sure that they don't actually overexpose themselves by any means, Minnie. They are more than aware of the fact that there is a trio lurking just above them, but at least for right now, it's not something that they have to deal with. They are sitting just above the surge damage threshold, but 145 is nothing that you can feel comfortable with. So obviously Abdul just trying to lock in to another sky base in the distance, hoping see if he can connect some shots. But if they don't find that damage soon, they could be in a world of hurt here.
Absolutely. UK lads, CZB, Nathan, Eclipse. Excited about this trio. trio that I think have a lot of potential.
Giveaway след трета игра ще го изтегля.
Skill ceiling, if you like, is still yet to be achieved. Of course, as I mentioned, all from the UK as well. So one of my favorite teams in the long, naturally. Looking good here though. Just bang through magic mosses. No eliminations. They are only 20 above, so this is their focus right now. Trying to find a couple of extra damage tags. They don't have the optimal mobility either, so for them they need to try and find that damage, try and maybe find a knock, something to get them comfortably above that threshold.
Well, the way that they were circling from Mass Meadows, they might be able to jump right in to this fight that's taking place here at Brutal Boxcars. Zara, we knew they were going to be looking for damage soon enough here. Vitini and Chap, though, they're the last team that you'd probably want to encounter in such close quarters. But there's not very many other options. Zara knows that they're not actually going to be able to push out a Brutal at this point. Too many teams just walk into the area, trying to hold them at bay. Vitini and Chab also know we've got more than enough surge damage. We just want to get a move on. We don't want to get caught in between.
Аре, Вико умира Фликси обаче. Едрикс умира. А Фликси как е станал точно на дот 1 HP, не знам леле какви писове отмина леле пак. На Вико, брат. Holy fuck. 3 кила for them. Зоната напредва обаче. Зоната напредва, лаунч падат. Тук няма да гледат. Чино обаче е на едно. Кридокси и то не е на много. Нямат лайц или просто не са събрали. Сърч имат. Обаче зоната ги натиска яката. Намира лайц, ще ги вземе. Има и фри слот. Виждаме Каме Чари си се добре там. В зона, билднали са зърва обаче, доколкото видях. Вино са стил зад тях между другото, зад Чино и Пабло. Още играта това на зоната ще е 5 тик, ако не се бъркам. 5 тик зона, те трябва да излезат много бързо. Пелет умира. Тук става много голяма битка с Малибука, Грипей. Двата тима. Тук виждаме нок. На Еклипс умира. Нейтан е на Бело. Първа игра може и да умрат тук, ако не успеят да го дабъл реснат. Успяват ли всъщност? Боба. Навлизат им с приелит. Не успяха да го реснат. 100 Бело с стил. Някакви ги спамят. Някакъв фул рандом тим. Фул опозит сайт. Нямат хилове SDB. Не са взели никакви плейсмети. Няма и да вземат май така както изглежда. TD Not Nice. Човека, който беше на дръмган, но в момента пада някъде другаде. CZB и Нейтан все пак живеят. Не, има доста мат CZB. 217 абъв. Пада на някакви. И Нейтан и той отива CZB ноква някой. Взима някакви шилове. Добре, взима 3 точки тук. 121 с стил. Няма никакви хилове. О, тук 131 с инфлейтър. Може би ако беше продължил с SMG-то. Или нямаше, тук го убиха. Има чък-джък и чък-джъга се деспалва. Естествено това е Fortnite компетитив, най-граната игра, която се кефи винаги, брат. Няма изключително никакви бъгове, няма и читъри. И все пак CZB и Нейтан оцеляват. Не знам как, обаче пред тях имат 4 тима, които са бокснали и малко трудно, освен ако не са фул ляво. Фул ляво пак има тима всъщност. Даже Малибука е пред тях. Малибука 100% ще ги погледнат. О, тук вижда нок. Взима само Бори, не взима сайфа, не е негов кил, за жалост. И все пак Нейтан отпява какъв клъч. Ако не го убият, обаче CZB умира и Нейтан е убит и той. Малибука влизат. Малибука влизат и ги убиват топ 19. До тях е моската. Мисля, че пак не им плува, май пак е много фар зоната. Да, зоната е мега фар as always. 3 точки за Малибука, first game, 1 kill. Даже са 0. Как така, но те не ги любиха са. Явно нито един кил от това не са взели. Все пак ще тръгнат да ротейтнат. Някакво долу ги гледа отляво. Те са добре се ротейтват. Чакат сега за спринт. Два бокса правят. Хай го взима Ivcho. Ivcho с high ground. Кам и Сети наблюдават тук. И взимат кил даже. Тези наблюдаванки. Къде са Вино и Вико и Фликси, дали са живи? Мерстач Суизи. Окей, хитнаха ги малко. Този аурата братле на едно го оставяха. Не виждаме къде са Вино. Видях ги дясно май. Вино обаче не го виждам. Или е умрял, или е много напред, едно от двете, но... май умря в килфида. Все пак Ivcho и Turtle са с много добър позишън. От двата края са го взели. И Вино е нокнат, да. Топ 13 все пак big game стил. Може да направят доста, имат и 4 кила, което на изобщо не е зле тук в тези стейджове. За топ 10 обаче може и да е към 200 точки, всеки стейдж е различен, обаче тук са дърво. И щяха да им направят предит, но все пак да и да не го направят. Спама е достатъчен да умрат. 8 билда, топ 13, 20 точки може и да не е от най-добрите игри. Тази планина дали ще успее да ги гарантира за FNC Grand Finals или не. Тяхният дроп спот, който смениха само преди 2 седмици може би. И умира топ 13 с 27 точки в first game, не е много добре. Ivcho стил на high ground. Стил на high ground. С 4 кила. Много добре за тях, Малибука ротетват под хай. Полутарпват си го. Дано са конектнати доста. Ivcho отива да конектва пак. Найс. Доста мацаха бят, но така е. Никой да не ги закача. Суизи добър крак тук. Куизи обаче е умрял май. Не е жив. Тук много зле му време. И Мерстач умира топ 11. Два от фейворитите да клаунат умира в топ 11 и топ 13. Сети и Ками обаче са първи на планината и няма да умират от Маунтин Пула тук. Тук Малибука се бият в зоната. Медмист, не го медмистна за 5. Някак си. Убива Чап Пинк. Пинк убива Чап. И Пинк успява да оцелее. Добре, добре. Взима си Сайфа на 24 билда, топ 8. 20 човека. Кой ще спечели? Беби под тях. Ivcho е стил. Ivcho е, може би, potential winner this game. Има доста неща. Над 100 билда имат стил. Мисля, че пулва 11-та зона, след малко имат 5 сплаша за аутил. Ками играят в зоната. 4 кила за тях. И тук Хайграна обаче ги видя, Чари умира, Сети умира. Ками се затива за маца тук. Успява да го вземе. Кап мац. На дърво. Взима фронтсайд. Обаче и Хая май на дърво вече. Кой ще ги гледа? Има ли фул трио? Има, да. Точно май тях ги спамят. Сангилт обаче от Лола убиват Ками май. На много добър позишън там. Ivcho обаче един от тях умира. Пинк взимат Малибука. Пинк се пробва сам за хай. Не, Turtle и Ivcho се още го взимат. Пинк пада с 2 билда е той. 9 човека, 6 има. Робин обаче на лоуграунда са 3. Ivcho умира от fall damage. Робин май ще спечели first game и ще отидат на Grand Finals, освен ако нещо не се обърка. Turtle топ 5 в момента, по-добре да коша някакви плейсмети. Да, всички са солота. Няма как да го лузнат, а Робин с 9 kill potential може би ще отидат на Grand Finals, ако вземат every single kill. Най-фри победата им някога между другото. И FNCS Grand Finals за тях. Нямат билдове, това не им пречи да им паднат при фенал въпрос. Даже май няма да вземат кила. Миксън умира. Освен ако Turtle не коче някакси, защото нямат билдове, не. Няма как. Няма как. Първа игра беше, да. Да видим тракъра как е. Топ 10 как е. Топ 10 в момента е 39 точки. Чап, Тини, Дела, Сети, Пинк, Сангил, Търтъл и Робин. Робин вече на Grand Finals на Ибла. Има верно доста тимове, брат, където може и да не клаунат. В момента Вико, Уизи са извън топ 10 между другото. Много стакнат. Тези спичове не ги знам. Амо са топ 10 и тези пешка и то не го знам къв е. Някакъв пешо, брате.
I mean, this is a trio that clearly saw an opportunity coming their way. We could see
that
the guys on the high ground turtles trio. It just wasn't going to be sustainable for them
Ивчо 24.
Takata, are you pleased for our
Предагия е умрял Елспаун.
going through to the grand finals?
Ау. Може и да не мейкне гранс.
And already off the bat, a lot of those kind of original trios we talked about only made it so far in the late game, but Sheeden, Trexer, and Robin did take home that victory royale. I believe they were landing hopeful heights, so that's a new spot on the map now. 11, it's gonna be good.
Yeah, I'm excited for them.
Но то е anyways почти едно и също като кой ще спечели тази игра.
You know, it sort of reminded me of sort of what you see in some eval games where you just sort of bide your time and your opportunity will come to go up there and ascend to high ground. But I think the cool thing here is like you said, Takata, right? Like every time a win gets taken up by another team that isn't one of the titans of the lobby per se, a bit more pressure, just a bit more pressure every single game. Yeah. And I think this is a good team to do it, right? Because they're a team that, you know, I think definitely...
О, това път трябва да го правя на много ли, бе, брат? Бах, че смята, защото никой не е... Защо е толкова просто изжа, брат? Holy fuck, брат. Трябва да го правя абсолютно на ново сега.
Sure, they secured a bunch of placement, a bunch of points for that consistency, but they'll have to try again for the VR, Frankie.
Well, for many of our trios, game one was just a warm-up. So let's take a quick break and we'll be back in a few to discuss how it went for them.
Pull something, bro.
Into the next. Expect that around game 3 is where we might see some of these teams begin to shuffle around, especially as the map opens up and we see more teams finding their seats in that Major 2 Finals battle bus. Ivcho, Kaito, and Turtle, though, they were so close to victory in that first match, Mini. To see everything kind of just take a tumble directly underneath them, the lobby just chopping them out so successfully. It can be a tough break for sure when you are that close to winning and then you still find yourself having to load up for the next battle bus drop.
Yeah, but it's looking like they're getting off to a good start here as they had a really nice pinch. Turtle getting another little angle. Couldn't really find too much damage there onto Anderlecht, so not necessarily exactly going as they would have expected or anticipated, but they're able to find that first knock. Taking advantage of
защото другия тим вече спечели игра и няма право да играе.
A lot together. You remember these guys from last season landing at Seaport City. I think it's quite fair for them now to decide to switch up the drop as Skyjump is just trying to find an opportunity here just to pounce, find a little bit of damage as his teammate Momsey is just getting mauled by Ivcho and Kaito. Unfortunately for Momsey, he does go down. And it's now all up to Skyjump. You would have maybe said in hindsight he should have taken a shot, but not quite to be. But there's another team, another lurker up on top of that hill. So if this fight doesn't get finished quickly, Taco, things could be looking bleak for Ivcho, Kaito, and Turtle as well. If they don't cover their angles well, this could be a fourth party.
Seeming like some short-lived victories as far coming into Demon's Dojo. But Ivcho, Kaito, they're definitely aware of the fact that there is another team trying to enclose on their current position. They're going to fall back temporarily and wait. They know Risk has that elevation advantage. It's Turtle opting to just fall back fully into the buildings here at Demon's Dojo. But Frixie, he's got other plans in mind. Unfortunately for Riz Trio, since they weren't able to actually get a huge advantage with the opening shots, Mini, it seems as though they've elected to just let that one be. They're not going to revisit Demon's Dojo just yet. They might wait for that trio to actually push out instead.
Look at this though, we saw Ewik, Unzen and Dom having a really nice bit of off-spawn fighting. Unfortunately though, it's another third-party situation. It's Abdel, YZY and Buzz who are able to hop on in here. Hop on in they do, and it's Abdel that finds that first. Onto Unzen. And but Ewik can manually breathe. Who's Domtat? They're gonna have to try and disengage and try and pick up the pieces there later on. Maybe find a reboot if they can. As now we go on over to the hillside just outside of Crime City. Skavia team that we did get to see a little bit in that last game, but they were taken out in that sort of mid-game fight, weren't they? So I think they'll be looking to
whatever, bro.
This game. You can see them building a massive surge tower. Zone seems to be a little bit more favorable for them. So maybe we'll see them play a little bit less aggressive in this game. So I don't think they had necessarily the best finish in that last game in terms of their placement overall. 8th overall, so not too great, but also not too bad.
But if there's one thing that Chaptini and Svi excel at, it's definitely close combat. It seems like they've spotted out a team trying to venture into the vault here at Crime City. Svi just circling the building, letting Chap and Tini approaches Svi, catches Fade completely off guard. Fade gonna immediately try to fall back towards Bendy, but now the trio fully split. This is exactly what Chap and Ski are after. Try and see if they can get a closing shot. Bendy no longer going to be able to assist the rest of his teammates. Is faded off that Memnis grenade. Buys a little bit more time, but it's not enough to extend his lifeline any more. Svi and Teeny, they were hoping for a fight. And the fact that it rolled up straight into their POI of choice is probably the last thing that the team had in mind. Still, it's going to be a nice position for them to sit in.
Как се казваш във Fortnite? Ivchou с българско О. IVCH и ото пишеш на български и ще ме намериш. Клик, стунати, джабко, etc. Трети има брат, кожи гледаш. Това е къв клип ще направя, ако имаше релоудната помпа. Ами Арти, ние не можем. Ами така още не може. След трета игра. След трета игра да се записвайте. Защото това не може. The tide of turn in that fight is completely flipped, but you say could have been flipped a little bit sooner as Voltiax also falls.
It's the fact that Voltiax even survived as long as he did in the first place. That was looking like a 1 versus 3 for the longest time, just because there weren't any shots actually being sent back. Vico, Flixie, Veno, just collecting the early game surge in a very familiar way to them. Mustache, Swizzy, and Queasy though this time around can be able to play as a fully intact trio from the start. No delays in their early game strategy just yet. And with the way that Mustache and Swizzy are currently based up, it is going to be very difficult for any teams in the surrounding area to actually rotate anywhere near the vicinity of Seaport City. Queasy also gonna take his time, just making sure to collect all the resources that are necessary. Also just take a separate angle approach. You can look at the opposite end of Seaport. Now you've got the north and south side covered fully as far as visuals are. And Queasy is definitely just hoping that he can maybe spot out Blaha in the distance.
Yeah, 2 separate surge bases, and from one surge base to another, this is quite literally the home for Seti. He's not going to be too concerned about this position.
Кога ще игра аз?
We talked about in the first game as well, just having that position. I think the zone was definitely in their favor, of course, in that last game, so they were able to get in that really nice advanced position. And they don't seem to have as many heals inside of their big surge base yet, but I'm sure they'll be continuing to find more. I think just having this hill right next to them gives them so many opportunities, so much flexibility on how they want to play the game, that consistent play style that we expect from this trio. You know, they have what it takes in terms of skill and caliber to win a game, and they have got better at that, but a team that we would expect to consistently make it through.
Трима победителя, брат. Единия... Абе, не знам какво получавате, брат. Някаква кирка получавате. Скин ли беше или другото, не знам. Какво беше? 3 кода. Случайно може да е FNC с кирката? Не е тя. Аз няма как да имам код за нея. Аз в Discord съм ги написал какви са наградите. Знам дали имаше скин. Втора игра е. Е, тук горе вдясно ви го пише. Europe Game Veil 5. Глайдър кирка и скин.
Some of these teams are certainly discovering is that even if they are successful with some of these off-spawn fights, the introduction of third-party opportunities is going to leave you considering how you actually want to play around a successful off-spawn fight, because you can never really consider the things that are closed and sealed off. You always have to anticipate another team lurking, trying to...
Има ли как да играеш? Ами не, това е за хора, които са клаунали само в момента. Еклипс има кърката, защото ще участва на Pro EM-а. Затова има кърката. Еми, Иво, защото ги нямам. Нито Трайскот, нито Блекен.
This is a trio that I'm very excited for. Also, 2 brothers in the same group, Eclipse and Twy. So I can only imagine what their household is like at the moment in terms of comms. Probably a bit hectic.
Who do you think gets priority on the internet?
Oh, I think they'll be fighting over it, I'm sure. But, you know, they better have good internet in that house to sustain both players playing at this level. But I know they're both top-tier players and they're very competitive as well. So
Еклипс и това са братя.
debates at the dinner table every night on who's the
Не
best.
знам. Нямам идея.
I'm glad that we're actually taking a moment to
I don't have a clue.
actually taking place here with Ping, Malabuka, and Wox. Also want to make note of the fact that this trio, I do believe, currently in Germany for a boot camp. So
Какво значи Early Access? Тя иначе как ще се взима?
Advantage over some other members in the lobby, but it's also just the camaraderie I think that can be introduced when you have teams all syncing up together to play out these kinds of events. It should definitely make for a promising performance here today, but nothing is guaranteed when you're looking at a group that is as stacked as this one.
So difficult to navigate this sort of group when you have so many different players. I know Manabuka, Ping, Wox, they've been landing at Lone Wolf the whole season. They're still trying to figure out the best way to play it. I think they've been trying to claim some of the metal around that sort of drop spot, trying to almost increase the area in which they try and operate in that sort of location. So they're still figuring things out. And as the analyst mentioned, they haven't necessarily had the best time as of late, but there's still potential for them to make that all good, and they won't mind if they make it to the Major 2 finals. Everything else is forgotten, I'm sure. So
няма да получиш. Иначе как се взима? Има ли друг начин да се вземе кликата? Какво ми обясняваш на проема 5 пъти, че се е взимал? Аз знам, че се е взимал от проем кирката.
Is always difficult, and they're sort of third-partying here into the area of Malabuka. They're inside of a little bit of a battle right now as well. I'm not too sure how they're going to approach it, because we know how good this team can be, but I think they're
Какъв Early Access та гони тогава? Момент. Early Access вика за кирката.
The expectations of them as well can't be easy to handle when it comes into these sort of lobbies. I like the way they're playing this. They're not just going all out here in this fight against Glubshy, Prax, and Gripey.
You always want to play with a little bit of restraint, though, when you know that you've got a team with a little bit of a bite back here, group-based team.
Юни месец, так му всички като се пенсионираме, брат. Ще има FNC с кирка за младите. Пракс обаче
unfortunately for Prax, the moment that he tries to actually leave the area, walks being Malibuka, they're not going to let him just stroll out of here scot-free. Instead, they'll have to box up yet again, just burning through so many resources now for Group A's trio. And
Сега вземам този билет, бе. Сега вземам билета.
later on,
Колко е билета?
this develops here, Mini, because Lone Wolf Lair, being Malibuka walks, they seem totally content to just let things play out here. They've got time on their side, even considering that they're the ones primarily in control of all the goodies in store at Lone Wolf.
$200. То да не са запълва нищо. Заради това винаги като плеирал никой няма на месата. Той е по-скъпо от на Travis Scott консерва, бе, за 2 дни. Коса. 20 нещо. Да няма да ми пеят там. Говорите.
And it's a team that still have been performing at this level, albeit slightly less so than we've seen last season. They were on a bit of a tear last season. They were by far the best team going into the Major 1 finals. Now things are a little bit different in terms of the landscape of the region. And I think a lot of that is to do with them sort of switching drops and maybe not having that same solidity that we've seen from them previously. But that doesn't take anything away from what they're able to do when it does come to these lobbies. They still are one of, if not the best team in the region. So expect them to qualify through.
Ма то не работи така, бе, с отваря. Те ще дадат на ръка кода, не онлайн. Те не са прости.
Definitely a good amount of people questioning whether or not they can continue to maintain their title as the holding on to that Blade of Champions, and all these other teams, especially some of the teams competing here today,
толкова пас не мога да го игра, защо го гледам.
To try and steal that away from them. Chap, Teeny, and Svi, though, they've kind of been making their way through this lobby. It's been a little bit smoother going as well since that initial fight taking place at Crime City in familiar turf. It looks like it's set themselves up nicely
може би
from
си
these
пара.
later deadside rotates, but they're still trying to be wary. They know that their team's definitely looking to try and hold them down from hillside positions.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is another trio that are boot camping in Germany as well. So,
Виктор го топ идея.
Pablo Wingu and Fred Oxy, they are all sort of together, and I like the sort of content that they're able to get from that.
Марци, пусни си да гледаш друго и
That's a situation as well, being in the same area, in the same room in certain cases. So I'm excited to see what they can do on that.
Ако селниш кода за крипчета в Енеба за хай прайс, ми да бе, дай $200, отиди там, каквото е за 2 дни. Още $200. Раздай така.
Who've been trying their very best all game just to try and find damage. They haven't been able to do it. Now their first elimination is going to be good, but it's not going to be enough.
But look to be like it might provide them a moment of relief that's completely turned against them, though. They've drawn the attention of some of these other teams that are looking to fly more inwards towards this next zone.
Не знам къде ще проема.
Also keeping tabs. Teams using that launch pad, just paying the price currently. And this is damage that can always play a really big part, especially when you're functioning as a duo amongst a sea of trios here. Risk hoping for another shot, but he's going to lose his teammate in the process instead. Stick's not going to be able to be left standing here for much longer. Zara on the other side of this wall. At this point, Benny, it's just holding other teams at bay. Zara might have been successful at the start of that, but not sure it's actually going to play
Джанекс с коя команда? Аз ги апдейтвам ръчно.
Nathan sees the Eclipse there, finding some success in their earlier fights, and this is really what can set you up for the end game. You know, sort of 6th zone, getting that storm
аз апдейтвам цифрите.
so much loot there, so much heals in order to propel them through this game, but no pain.
Що не мога да играеш, защото не се класирахме с Ивчо и днес. Тараха ни 520 точки, ние бяхме 130.
We're in 5-tick zone territory, though. Minnie, this is not helping any of these teams that are currently involved. Walks will at least find Siphon, so he'll be able to extend it just a moment longer. But he'll have to use the bulk of this chug jug just to get even close, and that's not even factoring in teams.
Как умря, бе?
Cutting him off
От
in the first place.
sickness май умря.
Pretty tumultuous start for some of these leading names here in EU, but their downfall might just be the upcoming for some of our other teams. V, Teeny, and Chap, they seem like they've got things figured out for the most part here. So they're looking to just try and establish solid position here, just outside of the primary focus, but Veno, Vico, and Flixie, they're not letting it go.
Говоря с Ивчо, че викал, ще не играем. Брат, аз не знам дали ще играем. Бяхме се разбрали, че ще играем.
To Nathan and Eclipse and CZB. Of course, CZB down, out, watching on. For these guys, unfortunately, it wasn't enough even to get them above the threshold, so they're still looking for damage. They're over-peaking, really, but they have to. They have no other choice here, Attacker. They need to try and find as much damage as possible, because when you're a duo, what's most important for them now is just trying to stick together and play out the end game, but they need to also think about Surge as well, so it's not ideal. But look at this. We saw them earlier on. Really firm Surge base that wasn't going to get broken down in full built metal right next
Колко е giveaway? Ами след третата игра. Сега е втора.
But if you give Queasy practically max mats from 8th zone onwards, it's hard
Добре,
to
добри
imagine
дрон кадри
being
и ни я
able
раздават
to
така.
translate that into a victory later on down the line. Still, never want to count your eggs before they hatch. They've still got to play things out the same as everyone else here. Cammy, Seti, Hari, they've managed to find themselves in a location where they could cut off some of these teams that are making the approach, but they just want to play it safe. They just want to play it calculated. They're not looking to take any unnecessary risk just yet. And Chap fully taking advantage of some of those players strolling in a little bit later towards these fringe points of the edge of zone. Peshka way back on the backside of the zone. Likely.
И когато го е казал това. След третата игра, да. Като свърши третата игра, просто трябва да напише нещо в чата и участва.
Much different situation to what we saw them in the last game, but they do live to tell the tale. They're okay, which is the main thing. They're still in the game, which can all go wrong sometimes. But for Zara, Zangi, and Rickball, these guys are looking solid up on height. We saw what happened in previous games where teams that were on height at this point did let it crumble. Are this team going to be different?
Bucks, да.
Pick up those refreshes, the materials, the minerals required to stay up. Are they going to fall to the same fate? I'm hoping for them that they can just use this zone pullback to their advantage. You can see them just extending out in the middle, just trying to let that build out before.
Да, то няма значение с кой ще го играе, то само топ 3 стрикова, знаеш колко ме интересува с кой ще играе. Това ще бънкът. Дали ще е с тях или не. Through this lobby right now, particularly since they're below on Storm Surge. They've got about 14 different things to think about at once. Damage being the primary thought. Какъв е това рандом тим на хайграунд, бе, брат? Те вземат да уинат някакъв рандом тим.
Just tackling one issue after the next, and while we saw high ground committing a lot of material early on, that pullback is definitely going to be something that Swizzy, Murstache, and Queasy are keeping in mind. They're going to
Ева, те къде го бутнаха. Какъв Fortnite.
Position currently, that is until they have a chance to actually look back. Some teams starting to spray into their current builds. They will be able to.
Невинно са живи тук. Кой е топ? 14. Ба те си държат хая и то много добре. Умраха. И тримата умраха. Дейм. Невинно взема и 3 кила, брат. Как побиват и тримата, не знам. Те с двамата бяха много напред, имаше един назаре, как не го реконектне, не знам.
be them. You can just see them looking to try and find even more refreshes. It's Venom all the way up on top. Vico, Flixi that are looking to try and find so
Вино, бум, 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 дед. О, двама дед. 3, 4, 5, 10. Аре, вече е 25 кила, брат.
which Venom can use to his advantage. This is one of the best duos right now at fragging out, playing together, and they're showing what they can do here on the top of the screen.
9 има potential win за тях. Те са с 10 кила. Помпа след помпа, AR след AR, билд след билд. Мърсач остава на едно и ги приедитнаха чапката, брате. Куизи, топ 9 умира. Куизи обаче ръв старт. Остават 3 игри за тях, те са почти извън топ 10, ако не са даже. Нико направо натягат. Ай, това фредокси как се смъкна. Как размахва с тази кирка и го убива. Браво на Вико. Няма хил, има чакджак всъщност. Не знам как не му е изчезнал чакджага. Топ 5 в момента. Откази дабл хит. Пулва бак. Тримата са на трима различни. Ликси обаче умира. Обаче Вино взима нок, взима сайфа, взима хилове. Взима някакъв мац, даже доста, 65 билда Вико. Вико фулпис, 14 фулпис агейн. Какви килове, какво нещо се случва тук с 16 кила бомба в момента. Чап го убил обаче 3 в 1 в момента. И умират. Не знам дали не го направиха нарочно за това да играят още 3 игри. Или просто умряха по някакъв много тъп начин, но не успяха да се печелят. Не знам дали е било нарочно умирането, но все пак good game за тях с 17 или 16 кил бяха. Нека видим лидерборда как е. Реци. И в момента те не са фърст. Не са фърст, те са 129 точки, втори с 16 кила и им прави 102 точки. Още една такава игра им трябва да клонат. Дали ще има така. В момента топ 10 е 61 точки. Куизи са извън топ 10, са топ 13, 54 не са далеч топ 10, но все пак им трябва добра игра. Добра игра им трябва. Чап, Тини и Ски отиват на Grand Finals. Първи с 10 кила правят те. Влад 3, Сангел 5, Търтова 6, Сети, Ками и Чари са 8 и 7 тук добро consistency, топ 7 в момента. Този рандом тим, къде са хората, които умряха на хайгранът ми интересно. Умряха някъде топ 14, май ако не се лъжа. Какви бяха тимовете, къде умряха топ 14? Това ли бяха? Не знам кой бяха, брат. Дали бяха... Май топ 14 умряха, ако не се лъжа. Ко стана? Не знам, не загубих. Имаше един тим, къде бяха топ 14, но ги загубих. Или и те да не бяха, не знам. Някакви шматки се хвърлиха от хай, брат. Трима умряха от хай раунд. То направо бах ти луза. 40 000 PR, братле, и е топ 253. Бах ти тега вия Europe Legion, бат. Ева. А като се замислиш, има само 750 човека в дивизия 1.
Chap, Tini and Skavi capitalized on that.
But, I mean, look at those boys, though. They are making it through to the major
Who are
finals.
next?
I'm talking about Tap TD and Skivvy here, and I'm so excited to see what they cook up in the lobby, because these are three names that actually I feel like the finals would feel bereft without. So I'm so glad that they've made it through, but I'm also very glad that Vico, Venom, and Flixi are still in the lobby, and we'll get to talk more about them and the other trios after the break.
After the break, what you mean about that, бе? What you mean after the break? Вие едва дойдахте, едва стръгнахте, бе, брат. After the break ми вика. Имаме ли чап? Чап ти не изкви. Кой печели с 10 точки, заложил е... Кой е човека? Не знам, кой е човек.
Confirm a victory royale and these kinds of matchups, it could be a huge confidence booster heading into the major 2 finals itself. But that's going to be something that's just on the back of the minds here for Cool, Siren, and Voltiax. They're now dealing with yet another team at the Kappa Kappa factory. They've been consistently moving their way through Kappa Kappa, happy to collect their third party for early surge damage. Granted, it's not necessarily an easy position to actually push off of because you're just inviting other teams to then hold you at bay, hold you on that fringe position of the map.
Слушане много, защото не могат да едитват много, брат, е за това.
Also do rather excellently is try and essentially pick off Blaha, Mixit, and Comeback over by the Shining Span. You can see these shots just taking place, being fired back and forth here between the bridge and Seaport City. Very familiar sight, and with all of the shield potions and stuff that Moustache tends to gather. But Moustache definitely trying to keep tabs on those teams over by Rolling Blossoms Farm, sending shots his way. It's for Doxy on the other end.
Yeah, they'll be more than happy doing that, just keeping up that storm surge damage, ensuring that they can sort of stay in that area with not too much trouble. For Elise, Spari, and Roman, these guys are just sort of boxing up right above the... I think it's that sort of Magic Mosses. No, it's more to the north, actually. So, the team Sangil, Tadi, and Julie, who have actually taken control of that Magic Mosses black market. They do have the loot from it as well. How they go about this fight is going to be interesting because they are now down to a duo. Kami, Chari, and Seti. Levin mentioned it on the desk. They did try and go for height last game. And I think it was Seti that got shut down by Veno. So you can see what they're trying to do. You can see the way they're trying to play these games out. And you can really just see that they're consistent as well in terms of their in-game performances and their Divisional Cup placements. Top 9 in all of the Div Cup finals. I mean, even NA. They've been playing a lot of NA Cups as well. The NA Central Divisional Cup finals. They made every single finals in that region as well. So... no matter what ping, no matter what circumstances, they're still putting in the grind. And for Della and Bevies, they've lost Axe Force, which is strange because, of course, Della was down earlier on. So they've been able to escape that difficult situation off spawn, and now it's up to them to try and get the reboot.
This is just Della out in no man's land, though. And even in the last lobby, we saw how many teams were getting kind of caught up in that fighting zone territory. Cool, Voltiax, Siren, still trying to fight things out here at Kappa Kappa. Finally, Siren gonna open the door here. Abdul will fall, but Cool, just underneath the underbelly of these builds, reuniting with this team, Boo Boo and YZY. It almost appears as if they want to continue this fight despite being down a teammate. But it's more so just the escape factor that they had in mind. This route's going to get cut off, though, by Cool. Still, don't want to consider anything as a total freebie. YZY going to at least force Cool to come to a slight bit of a pause here. Hopeful Heights just stuck. That's what it seems like for both of these teams. There needs to be a conclusion now rather than later. And Siren, he's not careful. He's going to actually find himself as the target. Thankfully, he does have 2 other teammates to back him up. So that will be a confirmed elimination. YZY, though, the fact is he's also just lurking. Things are a little bit more messy, though, than what Cool and Voltiax have been after initially.
Yeah, definitely. I think they would have thought that YZY would have just run away now. So YZY just opting to sit here. It's not actually a bad play at all. I think they would have just thought, yeah, he's run away. That's not a problem at all. But for YZY, he's going to be able to potentially pick up a reboot with that reboot van right next door. So nice plays from him. This is something we saw earlier. Glubshi actually trying to lurk in this sort of area. Unfortunately for Sangild, he's lost both of his teammates. As I was saying, this is what Glubshi and Frax and Grippe do very well. It's just that sort of lurking around these areas. So many trees as well to take cover from. And there's just so much opportunity for storm surge damage. And it's a very experienced team as well. Team-Ovе was in the last grand finals as well, Major 1 finals, placed 13th. Not a bad performance from him whatsoever. But for Sangild and company, without the company so far, things are looking okay, as he's not getting aggressed at the moment.
There is just so much happening, and then nothing at the same time here. All these teams in the surrounding area risk going to be... That is, what, 24 splashes that we're looking at right now? Sitting on one trio? So we know who's already made it inside of the backwoods
Even
black
more?
market. And yet, it doesn't seem as though Styx and Risk are actually going to be able to move out of this position anytime soon here at Magic Mosses. But I'm also just thinking about a team like Camiseti and Hari, who can definitely just keep notice of everything that's taking place. All those teams, all the shots being fired, they're bound to be hearing that. And they're in a prime position to just cut through the teams that actually start to rotate closer to them. But also teams are probably going to keep in mind that Camiseti Hari, they love basing up on top of that mountain surrounding the base tunnel and brutal boxcars. It's just the fact that you have to question, is this really a safe path to move through? Or am I going to be cut off sooner than what I'd expected?
And it's teams that are in these sort of surge bases like CZB, Nathan and Eclipse that will just cut people off when they are making those rotations. You can see them very split here as well. This does seem to be the way that teams are going about their Storm Surge if they're trying to play that more consistent style of gameplay. Hasn't been necessarily the best day for these guys so far, so they're going to need to find a little bit more success. And likewise ready for Ping, Malibuka and Wox still in the lobby. A team that we know how good they can be. We know how good they are when it comes to these sort of lobbies. These are the lobbies that they thrive in more often than not. And they're really trying their best here to change the way that they're playing way deep inside of the Storm. Of course, a much different sort of early game to what we've seen from this team in the past. Just using those launch pads to try and make their way around as much as possible. I think they did take advantage of that early fight, didn't they, at the train? So they have that flexibility now to play this more sort of slow and consistent style of gameplay at this beginning stage of the game.
It's just evident that the black markets and vaults have really made it possible for everybody to do their best Veno impression. Is really what it's seeming like. I mean, you've got a handful of players that are always notorious for opting to play the dead side, opting to just play from deep inside of those Storm positions, get the more favorable rotates after they build their surge early on. But when everybody's doing the exact same thing here, Mini, can definitely cause some problems. Dead side starts to look a whole lot less so, and well, X-Force, Bevies, you would think that they would be out of the thick of it by now. Instead, caught with YZY's team at Hopeful Heights. Both sides desperately needing a little bit of surge damage, though. They want to keep things moving here in this third lobby. And YZY, Abdul, Ubu, they've yet to find their opening shot. Almost leading themselves out slowly, considering that they need to strike. They've got to make these cleanups be quick, but it's anything. Just doesn't look like anything is going to give here.
I think Della, X-Force and Bevies do need these knocks, the damage, because they had to do a couple of reboots earlier on in the game. They're going to lose that early damage that they got from that off-spawn fight. Bevies connects with a beautiful shot there into Abdullet again. With another great connection onto Buzz. That's how it's done. And it's now just up to Della and Bevies as X-Force does fall. YZY is the target. It's a 2v1 situation, but not all players have that much HP. It's only Della with the shield, but the white HP is dwindling, so it's an even playing field in terms of health. It's whether YZY can connect with one of these shots as Della hops on in, but no chance for YZY. Della and Bevies are the surviving players from that fight, and they're going to run away as the victors. Crucial Storm Surge damage for them. They're going to have to pick up Axe-Force, which I think is going to be their third reboot of the game. We get to see this beautiful double knock here from Bevies. First one under the ramp and the second one through the window. Peekaboo, and he's back to the lobby.
Just knowing that there's still such an uphill battle to deal with. I'm not going to say it's impossible by any means. Although I'm sure that they would have preferred to have won out that exchange without having lost a teammate in the process. Tidy, Jewel, and Sangil. It looks like they might be circling their way through magic mosses, but they're fully aware of the fact that they've got a team kind of trailing from behind them, a little bit more north. That might just be the play though for Jewel. Gonna try and open things up instead. Eats way too much damage in the process. At least this campfire is gonna buy him a little bit more white HP than what he needs. Tidy, on the other hand, hoping to see if he can find a separate angle. There is no opportunities here for Tidy and Sangil just yet. They know they've got to keep things moving forward.
We're back.
They can't afford to get caught in the storm for this long, especially being aware of the fact that there's teams that have already gotten ahead of them. They're already based inside of the zone.
Здраве дадох съп.
Zone does pull in their favor though, so
Where?
they shouldn't have too long of a rotation.
Леле Прокрафт дава съп на Рости, брате.
Most of that.
Thank you so much за гифнете съп, man. Thank you so much. Тут ма няма.
They are above though, so they're looking pretty good in that department.
Thank you so much.
Vico, Flixi, and Veno are making their way inside.
Даже ма дабуюта докато ма няма. Thank you. Колко FPS те докато го мърдате? Кой знам, ще докато го мърдат.
As Faded and Co have to try and drop down. For Vico, Veno, Flixi, this is where they need to do as much damage as possible. The analysts broke it down at the beginning of the day. This fight, the way that they fight is so important. You can see Veno just applying as much pressure as possible, nice and up close. Vico, Flixi looking at other angles, but no,
Vico mirror.
successfully, unfortunately, as Vico does fall. It's all now up to Veno and Flixi as Vico does get finished as well. So now it's turned into a very difficult situation for this trio who now have a disadvantage in terms of players. There needs to be a big connection from one of these two. It's not going to be from Flixi who does fall, but it's going to be Veno.
Ако не беше мислено, ще ги тригване.
And hopefully now for him he can turn the tides in his favor. But it's going to have the experience of Veno to solo clutch here against a very formidable team. It's Bendy on the other side.
Okay.
A shot from Veno, another shot onto Faded. Now Veno's looking like he's got a bit of confidence here. He's got the upper hand in this fight. 73 is going to be enough to do some damage, but not enough to take him out as Bendy still tries to get inside of the box. They're still trying to stay aggressive as Veno's still trying to heal up as well. He's got so much piece control, Veno. It's not going to be enough to find that
Взима
shot.
кила, ама няма да го оцелеме.
As well, so huge turn for Veno. He just needs to get this next knock, but no, the other team are able to heal up Taco. Things were looking so good for him there.
But the time has already been spent. At this point, it's just Veno looking for elimination points.
Уизи до чак, това е коя зона вече? Пета ли? Шеста зона, о, никакъв шанс да ребутне той.
Granted, rather injured themselves, but it's just the fact that they're at least a pairing. They're not left in that solo kind of clutch situation. Veno might be able to make something happen as far as additional placement points are concerned, but right now they're probably just happy
Прокрафт,
to know
защото
that they are
ще ходи на Про и му зарсайме
in
както.
that top end of the consistency side for the leaderboard.
Tell you what, there aren't many players in this lobby that would be able to, as a solo, force a duo to run and disengage from a fight like that. Veno doing absolutely everything he could to stay in the game, nearly taking both of them out as well, so again, just highlights how good Veno really is in those box fight situations. Every single one of that trio, any of them in that situation, and I'm sure the team would still run away, and we can see that very team right now. Bendy and Fade, of course, now just just shows how important it is just to keep applying that pressure when you're in that solo clutch situation as Veno was doing. He wasn't boxing up and backing down. He was connecting with shots, being on the front foot, getting aggressive, using the piece control that he had. It's worked out in his favor so far if he's still in the game.
Malibuka ping and walk, saw that unstoppable medallion just left behind on the minimap, but Sangil, Jewel, Tidy.
Тихо, че знам найден клава, бе.
Just focused on trying to keep
Тези
the
коментари.
water, essentially. Lone Wolf Lair, just way too much
Прокрафт
traffic.
достатъчно е, thank you.
Initially
О, така, Малибука му влизат вместо на Малибука, халок на едно. Вокса ще умре, може би.
behind him, hopefully.
Лад, това трио нокна Мали... те са нокнаха взаимно, добре, викам, че са 3v и не продължават, но тук виждаме рез за рез, сърч за сърч. Топ 19 в момента.
on everything that they've gone through, the efforts of in the first place. Jewel finalized, the body loot brought into action, and Ping walks Malabuka. Got a moment to breathe. In comparison to where the rest of the lobby stands, though, they definitely got to keep their wits about them.
Дъвка дъвчеме. Блаха Миксан и комбек. Големия шкембек май ще ги кланат 147 точки, не е никак малко, обаче те са последният тим, който ще влиза в зоната и няма да им е много добре. Окей, тук има някакви стени, обаче видяха ги тук много добър тар по Блаха. Никой няма да ги сплифне. Ого, тук патрона влиза с CPR. Как влиза с CPR, направо не знам. Падали за 20, добре. За 50 даже попадна. Така ми набарват някакъв лук. За сега всеки ендгейм са влезнали в ендгейм. What? Ками и чари са били точно на едно, брат, и двамата точно на едно. Как е possible това и са оживели? What? Ето е играта, може би, за Куизи. Взимат хайграунда. Дали ще успеят да спечелят този хайграунд? И самата игра. Медалона е на никой. Медалона е извън зоната в момента. Той даже боса, не знам дали е убит. То в тия лобита как да го убиеш, брато. Той това влак от всякъде могат да изкемпят. Стои 30 е бъв за тях. Continue to look up, and I think it was Eclipse there trying to build up as well, so Queasy might have another problem on his hands, as they do. It's Nathan, CZV, and Eclipse who try and take it off. Мартач го кракват, откъде го кракнаха, бе, бе? И ги сплифат от хай. Ооо, Суизи оцеля. Хубава им зона между другото, Малибука взимат друг рефреш. Secondary height position. They've been holding things down slow and steady, but Swizzy, Queasy, Merstash, they're the ones who are in the driver's seat currently. They're trying to control the flow of this lobby. Malabuka now pull uphill, даже леле Pink. But Ping gonna cost a huge chunk of his shield in the process of moving upwards, trying to follow behind his teammate Malabuka. They'll be forced to come to тук това е за малко да го писнат. Все още са на хайграунд. Queasyто. Potential winners this game, maybe. Топ 14 в момента, почти всеки е трио. Камето, добър шот през стена и през друга страна. През две стени шота за 150, брат. Взимат приедита в ендгейм, дед 200. Остава QB, бате. Е, така са правят приедити, full confidence. Queasy обаче може да изненадваш плей. Добре, не. От зоната ни дойдаха. Имаш шанс да дойдат от зоната да ги изгърбят. Все още държат хайграунда. Това е Ковакс като трил са долу все още. Ками взимат фронтсайд. Много пиловита, не знаеш къде да гледаш. Малибука тима с 10 кила изглеждат много добре, 115 точки в момента. Има само две дулта или... Не знам. Но в момента Queasy то хай никой не го гледа. Доста хора с дърво почват са приедите пак отдолу. Миксън са проха са фърст, не успяха са фърст лоу. Все пак е 5 билда от тук. Това Добре, добре са там. Не продължиха да спамат обаче пинг. Вокс е умрял, пинг ще умре може би всеки момент. Умират 124 точки, топ 8 с 10 кила, може би или 11. Все пак мерсачко изи, все още държат хайграунда. 8 билда, 10 чак няма да имат за ауткил, трябва да избият цялото лоби долу след малко. 7 тима, 20 човека остават. Каме с дръмгъна в момента. Фулоу, влизат му кракнате. Чара умира обаче, Каме на малко. Както е сетито. Оп. Сети оцелява ли? Всички са на много малко. Това изглежда фри уин за Куизи в момента. Освен Рафа за Рао. Само той е с шилд. И Андилекс. Обаче Андилекс. Обаче Каме какви клочове в момента. Леле. Каме кил след кил прави тук. Обаче Куизи няма какво да ги спре. Няма какво да ги спре. Играе за second place. Дали ще го вземе обаче. Миксън на 10 кръв и Каме успя да вземе second place, брат. И Куизи отиват на Grand fucking Finals, трета игра. О май гот. О май гот. What a game from them. Let's see the results. Топ 3. Топ 4 по-скоро. Комбек. Буа и Миксън отиват straight to Grand Finals. Трети, бре. Ако имаха second place, чаха да са 100%, в момента са 90%, 95% шанс клоу с 207 точки. Зад тях Сети, Чари, Каме 159, почти клоу. 6 са Вико, Вино и Фликси. Имаха трол игра в момента, 132 точки, няма да ходне. Нито пък 159, така че за тези две игри всичко може да се случи. Санги отири Джули с 130 пинг, Малибука е Вокс 124 топ 8, Търтъл Хайджо 111 и топ 10 Рикбор за Занги. 11 Колакс, Пабло, Дела, CZB, Андилекс напреда тук. Глъбши и Грипей може да ни мейкнат грантс. Giveaway. Сега след четвърта игра ще го направим. След четвърта. Давай, правиме го, бе. Ко стана, бе? Те виждали са това? Абе, гайс, пишете нещо. Пишете нещо в чата. Пишете нещо в чата и се записате за giveaway. Който си вижда името, брат, трябва да напише нещо, тези където пише not active, защото not active значи са писали нещо, вече ги няма. Пишете нещо в Twitch чата, давам ви 2 минути време, защото да може да има записали са. Печелите 3 победителя. Първия код ще е за скин, както съм ги наредил в Дискорда. Така ще е. Ако сте написали нещо, не спамете по 5 пъти, ако може. А хората, които са not active и са писали нещо, тук ли са в чата или не? Stream Elements. Как мога да активирам Stream Elements? Да пише нещо. Добре, стана актив. Айга, 61 записали са, обаче те къде са not active. Трябва да се активирате, че да мога да стане. Са 8 и 2 теглим първия уинър за скин. Чай да видя. Значи първия победител печели The Batman Who Loves Outfit, Robin's Perch Back Blink и Dark Days Lowering скини. Така че 3 неща печелят от един код. Първият човек. Скин се печели. Втория печели Glider. И третия човек печели Batarang X. Pickaxe. Всички имате равен шанс да спечелите, не съм го правил. Някой да има по-голям шанс. Аре, ставай две и теглим. The first winner. Аре! Who is going to be? Procraft, бате! Не, какъв coincidence, holy fuck. Procraft winning the first skin, bro. Holy fuck. Oh my god. Какъв късмет. No way, брат. След тези събове, ето, че се спечели и код за скин. Procraft, пише ми по Discord. Там с профил, Twitch профила си. Але, теглим втория победител. Сигма Тарзанката, бате. Тарзанката и той печели глайдер. Тарзанка, тук ли си пиши нещо? Има минута да ми отговоря. Нямаме. Няма го, теглим друг. Пиши по Discord за наградата. И снимай и Twitch профила. Той. Сега третия човек. Печели пикекс, гайс. Let's see. Иванчо, брат. Иванчо is he here. Иванчо with the pickaxe, брат. Къде пише родина слаб. GG на печелившите, брат. Да ми пишат по Discord, печелите си нещата, които ви казах. Good job на вас. На победителите.
I actually thought they were going to be higher, to be honest, because they were really popping up in.
GG's, bro. Имаше 70 човека, записали са, 3 спечелиха, гайс. RNG. Procraft, я ми пиши. Май да ми пишат победителите, а? Ако до един ден не са ми писали тегля нови, брат. Уиската спечели ми, уиски, дай PayPal тогава. Не забелязах. Чай са. Прокрафт каже дали работи. Трябва да влезеш в Fortnite Redeem Code и да не ликваш кода на никой. И да си го въведеш в твоя профил, който ще играеш скина. На Last Chance един win трябва да. Топ 33 клава, 3 игри, 3 победителя. 3 Grand Finals. Човек. Ликни ми го. Не може.
Also just
Prokraft, thank you.
at that current point. So for Bevies, Axforce and Della, they're using this as an opportunity to come on through. Beautiful shots there from Bevies using the infiltrator, the sniper shotgun in a way when you have that level of aim. And it's going to be easy for them there just to roll on through a formidable fight from those guys. You can see them already just building up.
Леле, Прокрафта веднага даря съб, брате, на преслича. На преслича дава съб. Прокрафт, thank you so much, bro. Thank you so much за събовете. За гифнатите събове, thank you so much. Appreciate it, bro.
Find his way in this fight.
Thanks.
Just looking for more angles, and they're just playing so well.
Double Ivchata, guys.
But also at separate positions. And I can't see Vico, so I'm not too sure where he is. And maybe that's why Flixie and Veno aren't just jumping in here. They're just trying to find a little bit extra storm surge damage, because we saw them in that last game, wasn't it? They were looking for a little bit more damage. They were forced into that fight where Veno had to hit that 1v3 clutch, and of course it didn't work out in the end. So maybe there's a little bit more proactivity here, Taco, in terms of getting storm surge damage. Hopefully for them it'll work in their favor.
I mean, for Veno, Vico, and Flixie, they don't really have anything to lose. They're so comfortable with how many points they've been able to build in the first place. On the
Абе, къде ще е по-добре да стримвам? В Twitch и TikTok или в Twitch и YouTube? Къде ще е по-добре?
They are just sitting so lavish in comparison to a lot of these other teams, and Vic certainly wishing that they could find some kind of conclusion, but Veno and Flixie, they are just not letting up, just consistently peppering, consistently spraying. Vico, he's finally decided to join the mix and
Twitch, YouTube.
catches an elimination for it. Make that 2 as Seke is gonna be next up.
Обаче тъпото е в YouTube, че това. Като пуснеш някаква песен, бърслейта, копирайт страйкват, аз трябва да играя без Spotify, човек. Ние всъщност май имаше как да се оправи това с Spotify, обаче ако има някой друг стример, първо сега Fortnite, като свършат играта и се чува някаква песен, бърте, и това е стейто копирайт за YouTube. И аз трябва да мютвам всяка 5 секунда, брат, аз All Antics не знам как го прави. Победителите, ами Тарзана, Орленчо и Прокрафт. Обаче Тарзана още не ми е писал, брат. Тарзана, ако си тук в чата, ми пише по Дискорд.
And this is a trio that have been coached today by seemingly everyone. Stormy Wright, Chicks, Malabuka.
Да, Иванчо. Аз не казах ли Иванчо?
Not Malabuka. But lots of people inside of the call there, but Annie already getting a nice knock.
Орленчо съм казал. Може. Ама той Spotify май има как да се фиксне, защото в Twitch, примерно, като клипнете нещо или отвода не се чува песен. Обаче за YouTube трябва да разгледа и там как ще се прави. Доколкото пък ако чуя някакъв стример да... някаква песен, братле, трябва да ми кажете просто, I guess. Какво стана с кик? Чак на 22 мога да реаплайна там за Verified. Ама едва ли ще ме приемат. Макар че имам там, нали,
consistently finding
там каквото
themselves
искат.
inside of those
50 average viewer-а,
positions, and that's exactly
10
what you
съба,
want to be. If you
300
don't
юник
confirm the
чатъра
Victory Royale,
и
still
50
being able to
фолуара
have
или
that
150 фолуара.
consistency placement off the leaderboard is always a nice touch. And it's also, consistency is definitely something that they're after when you consider how Major 1 panned out for them. Probably hoping to remain uncontested if they, you know, confirm themselves for the Major 2 finals. But they are definitely not the only ones. Mixing Combat Blaha, a little bit more of a scenic view, but Cranky just found himself in a very difficult position. He is entirely too split from the rest of his team, and Combat Blaha mix, and they look hungry for an elimination. It's not going to take them much time at all. Poor Cranky just one step too far behind the rest of his trio. Absolutely nowhere left to run.
The freedom that Blaha, Combeck, and Mixon can play with right now is unmatched because they've pretty much already qualified. I think it was 207 points going into this last game. So, to be honest, for this trio, they don't have anything to lose whatsoever. I think it was just over 200 points last week. I think it was 204, something like that.
Не, в кик не лагва. Просто е нова платформа и хората не искат да учат на нова платформа.
Not to mention that they don't have to worry about that team at Seaport because Queasy, Swizzy, and Murstache, they're already out. They're already qualified for the Major 2 finals. And
единственото, което няма е channel points, всичко друго е по-добро от Twitch. Даже няма и реклами там.
Could be part of the reason though why we see them going on tour so early too though, because they have been going in a little bit of an exchange with Seaport. Instead, they're gonna have to find that surge elsewhere. Love the fact that they're being proactive with it though.
They're being proactive with Stellar Axe Force and Bevies. Bevies early getting knocked though. Abdul gets tagged, so he's gonna have to heal up after getting that initial finish and knock. And for Buzz, he's also gonna try and get a heal off here as well.
Може да не се вижда реклама, защото в България няма. Ма като цяло има реклама. Плюс това имаше един период, където и в България имаше реклами. Аз с 6 адблокъра имах реклами, бе. То даже като съм не в Twitch, ами съм в Twitch Theater, е там всеки път имам реклама по 3 минути. To Twitch Theater.
Sort of the story of the day for this trio, and big moments for them, of course, in this game, because they're just sort of outside that top 5 inconsistency. So if that's the way they need to go about qualifying, they need to make this
Дам
game
на хора, които знам и на някакви топ донетъри.
looking to try and spoil their party up in the top end of the leaderboard.
Ама като кажа топ донетъри, не искам сега да даваш 59 съба. Випове съм дал май на Данито, на Никси за топ донетъри.
All just trying to encroach upon where Della is currently boxed up at. But Della, they'll look to delay for as long as possible, possibly hoping for some form of a third-party exchange to maybe bail him out of this position.
Клишотове се размяват.
Into his favor entirely. Della's still in control of a little bit of the high ground, but with Abdul now making the approach from a separate angle, it's just too much firepower. And Della just doesn't have the HP to work with here to actually convert this into something more promising. A full trio just playing it safe until they know for sure that they can confirm it. And Della, sure enough, wiped yet again from the lobby. The
Не, по-крат не си дай парите на мене. Ако искате да му подкрепате, просто стак Ivchou или ми играйте мапката, и двете неща са фри. Нали, то като... По-скоро V-Bucks не е фри, ама така не помагате директно на мене, ми си взимате нещо от играта. От това Абдел Батле. Фри Дърмгън имате 18 точки.
So now it's all up to Buzz and YZY, but of all the teams in the lobby that you don't want to fight, it's a team like this, not only because of how good they are, but of course the amount of freedom they have right now. They could be just sitting back, relaxing, and enjoying themselves in this lobby, which is seemingly what they're doing.
Don't think there's anything much worse though than watching this tactical strike force land right on top of you. Blaha, Mixon, and
Блага го колат, да. Имат и дръмгано вече. Намериха и втория.
Be quick about it. Don't allow the opportunity for a third party to come into play. And Abdul, while he did manage to knock comeback initially, you can see it didn't necessarily bode super well for the rest of his team, and YZY chased out by Blaha.
Ами Прокрафт, thanks за думите, брато.
Continuing to one by one collect as many eliminations as they feel like, but
Шкембака го
this
клонаха, верно.
definitely has to be putting a pretty heavy mark in terms of their surge damage.
Oh, 100%. It's a bit of a disastrous situation for Abdul, Buzz, and YZY, because they're a team that were in second last going into this game. So that was almost the perfect start to their penultimate game, getting their Storm Surge done early in that fight against Axel, Stella, and Bevies. It was a perfect start for them, and they probably were thinking, right, this is great, we're going to be on the up here, and then who comes swooping on in? It's the team that you don't want to be fighting. But for Redoxy, Pablo, Wingu, and Chino, we've seen a little bit of them throughout the day. It hasn't been amazing, and likewise,
Ще вземеш по-голям спад. Не знам, това ма кефи пък.
Threshold, so every move they make is just so important. And I think this is a team that we
Бих се взел някакъв глас малък спад, ама те... Разбрах, че трябва някакви специални неща или какво било. За тези глас малък спадове, те плюс това са по-добри за Valorant. И се отказах да взема.
Strange for them not to be in the major 2 finals, albeit since we had, of course, Fredoxy not make major 1 finals. It wouldn't be that shocking, I suppose.
Кои сирии почна да гледаш? Еми свършах с Декстър и почнах Декстър ни облад. Аз след Декстър ни облад не знам. Какво ще правя?
Collect an elimination, and they need every single point they can get. That quick flashing of the leaderboard showcasing that they are
Аз си казах, че след
just outside.
изгубени няма да гледам сериали повече. Не защото не ми харесват, ами просто много време отнемат. Ама после видях Lost, после ми викат де Декстър. И то като са такива премнати шоута, брат, как да ни гледаш.
Emotionally jarring that a lot of teams want to try and avoid that at all costs. But Eclipse, CZV, Nathan.
Да, так му за това викам аз.
They don't want to overexpose themselves by any means. Still, they have a lot of material to work with. And a lot of our teams today also just professional storm chasers, it seems like.
Yeah, a lot of these mid-game fights have sort of taken place in the storm, and it's obviously just a lot of heals in the game. Getting that early damage for teams.
Махни, като падаш да се ресетва. Това да го махна. Може, добре, защото и на мен нещо не ме ескейф, като падам да ме ресетва. Това ще е добър за Valorant. И аз скачух. Prison Break викат, че само първия сезон е някакъв мега mind-blowing, I guess. Другите не били добри.
Would take a really strong performance from multiple teams in the lobby, and that's something that Mix and Blaha and Convict are trying to shut down some of these stragglers.
И Бубу.
Buzz looked like he'd been running a marathon essentially for how long he'd been trying to escape from Convict, Blaha, and Mixon. Fortunately, so far to run when you're getting chased to the absolute outskirts. Jewel, Tidy, and Sangil. Brutal boxcars. And they're just kind of waiting. Trying to maybe scope out if there's going to be teams that they can look to try and cut off, but Jewel knows Surge Base directly behind their current position. Want to try and poke some odd shots here and there. Maybe try to dissuade them from focusing you. I like this though from Tidy, just trying to build as many fish as possible, spend as much time as possible fishing, and this is something that
Брат, тя Това шоу, този сериал 1899. Така се надях да има втори сезон, те моите не направиха, брат, втори сезон на този сериал. И то бахти сериал, брате, имаше 7 епизода или колко. Тия 7 епизода са бахти прем епизодите между.
Inside of that top 5 consistency right now, not as solidified as some of our other teams, but they're a team that do have what it takes to win a game in this sort of lobby. We've already seen how treacherous the lobby has been to some of our top teams that you would have already expected to maybe get a win for now.
9 сезона с по 25 епизода на сезон.
We've seen them lurking, we've seen them having a couple of situations where maybe teams are third party and they've had to really be reactive to what the rest of the lobby are doing so far today. And they've been doing that very well, but Vico, Veno, Flixi, they're continuing their push through this lobby, going to pick up their 5th elimination of the game. There goes Vexi. And they're able to just play so deep inside of this storm. Again, they don't need that storm surge damage. They set themselves up nicely previously, and surely they're going to find Kaisers right now.
Добре, Вино имат добра игра за сега.
Really nice elimination, really nice.
150 точки.
So 6 so far. They've got to make their way in now, though, and they're just on a tear at the moment through this lobby. And it's just the speed at which that fight was able to be finished at, which is really important for that team.
Almost anticipating that Venom and Flix are going to fight yet again. Zara's team closing up behind them, but Vico, Veno, Flixi, it's just so concise the way that they actually tackle some of these fights. They do such an excellent job at just forcing trios to kind of keep tabs on so much as a singular player. It's just the way that they manage to time and time again isolate individuals. That is incredibly impressive, but they might have a whole different kind of problem because despite everything, they find themselves still rather deep inside of the storm. Zangi, Rickford, and Zara right behind them. And they're trying to definitely keep their heads ducked down low, throwing shots out where they can. But 1200
Козмото не знам, брат, то това е някакво ново просто. Сигурно е някакъв money cash grab. Макар че е $2, което било.
Yeah, the position is pretty good there as well. They got onto that dead side of zone. You can see the zone just pulling all the way back to where they are now. But unfortunately for them, the next zone pulls a
бахти високата сърж база, братле.
Simple rotation along this sort of dead side, but didn't quite work out in their favor before. I did see Wox, Wox down in the feed. So Malibuka and Ping are left as a duo.
Това не е добре, че са дул.
Situation for this team. I mean, we could be in a situation here, Taco, going into the last game where if these guys fall, they need a win to qualify on through. So every single move that Malibuka and Ping make right now is going to be that much more important.
Ивчо не
Still
знам.
need around sort of 80 points-ish in order to qualify.
Ping, Vox, and Malibuka average 6.33 elims per finals game.
Average eliminations per
The highest on EU.
highest in EU.
Окей, бро, окей. Обаче в момента са един кил, така че тази статистика може и да падне.
They have what it takes in these sort of lobbies to find eliminations, find the damage that's required. So I wouldn't count them out yet, but looking a little bit bleak going into this end game, being only a duo here.
Part of the problem just seems to stem from the fact that the last couple of weeks of the Div 1 finals, they seemingly lost their identity as a trio. They've kind of been going through an array of, I don't want to say dysfunction, but it's definitely been much more disastrous than what you would hope for. And Gino, Ferdoxia, and Pablo, they might find themselves along a similar note. I mean, you've seen the highs, you've seen the lows with this trio just formed, but Malibuka doing what he can.
Malibuka топ 18 на сезона. Дали ще взема 3 точки повече за топ 17. О, той е нова билда, аз се видя. О, обаче Пинк, кил след кил. О, мага Пинк. Клочнаха много точки тук. Ако ни го хитнат, Малибука го хитнаха обаче, кракнаха го. Тука Пинк изскочва, бате. Обаче май ги преедитват. Вино май умря. Вино май умря в килфида. Лик се взима кил. Не знам дали е бил full eliminated или е нок. Естествено брат, всеки защото ще мине пръстената му, да. Not whip, обаче whip на един път. Вико и Фликси, само Вино е умрял, да. Трябва да направя добра игра те. Така ми се чари 171 поинта. Имат голям шанс те. Топ 15 в момента. Ето ги Малибука, където нямат минита и само маци имат. Някакси, пак са в зона някакси между. Щяха да умрат топ 19, в момента са топ 15, клъчат си точките. Метичната помпа има даже, Малибука. Пува им макс. На Пинк, какъв му е лоудаута? Пабло е на хайграунд.
200 people with that mythic pump can do it, so one big shot can turn their entire season around.
Фликси и Вико ротейтът. Отиди на едно го оставя тука. Гледат да не ги дисконектнат тука. The elevated position above the rest of the lobby is looking really strong for them right now. I just saw ping there going down in the feed and we can see what Malabuka has to do and this is what we spoke about. Тук ако не беше мислено, шаха 6 на 100. Anyway, са на топ 12 в момента. Окей. Най взимат кил с 3 точки тука. Взима и плейсмент още. 30 билда, спамят го като лут. Умря. Топ 11, нищо добър коч от тях. С каквото имаха, те какво направиха. Вико като соло 180 точки, може би няма да е enough, трябва да има още малко last game. Вико ако клошне тук обаче. 0 билда е вече, наспамиха го, почти е крак. Не го кракват, което е добър знак. Може да направи някакъв биг пъмп тук, сега на това отдолу. Топ 10 си умиска пампа и умира. Топ 10. Ако беше го хитнал. Не знам дали ще го бия, но... Сизи би се първо за рест, ама как. 160 чак може да го играе за зоната. Това е прави някакъв плейсмент да клъчне тук. Bubble still on high ground. Тук отдолу Каме Сити и Чари продължават low ground. Към 180 точки са май Каме Сити. Някъде там. Всички са трилта. Не са всички трилта, май бат. Тук обаче на хайграунда. Не, викам, че се сбиха на хайграунда. Не се. Не, всъщност се сбиха, да. Грип е на хайграунд. Спракс. Глуп ще е умрял. Грип е, дали ще успее да клане аген. Те са трилнаха и защото сам да можем и това. Анделекс много бил да някаква направи. От мис. Два миса. Блаха с 300 точки, 100% клоу. 15 кила за тях от лоу граунд, дали ще спечеля даже е тази игра, малко трудно, но не е невъзможно. Блаха даже успя да попне този чък, обаче е малко трудно да го уина това. Грипе може би ще имат победата тук. Все пак нищо не се знае, знае се вече кой ще е, но и двата тима отиват на Grand Finals, така че ако Грипе бяха лузнали тази игра, нямаше да ходят на Grand Finals, но да. Вече и двата тима отиват на Grand Finals. Let's see. 306 точки, братле. Втори, трети. Леле, какво са направили тези, брат? Сети чариками 198. Викомино Фликси. Като цяло май с 100% клао. Сега 100% може би 90% е топ 10 гарантирано за тях, maybe. Не знам. Сега зависи кой спечели да е. Ако спечели някой от Проносизи би спечели, брат. Няма да е добре за тях. Ако умрат този спаун. Но тия съм пълн. Или ако тронат просто играта. Ливше може би няма да направи грант с кой друг. Туай Ковакс. Делакс First Baby. Анделекс. Нейтън ако не направят. Фридокс ако не направят добра игра. We will see какво ще стане last game, bro.
Looking pretty bright in this game. Things are looking good. With the way that the team play, you wouldn't put it past them in terms of their experience and their ability to just go ahead and win this last game and just, you know, make sure that they can get the job done. For Axforce, Bevies and Della, they've had a little bit of a wobble here off spawn previously. I think it was early on, game number 1, I think it was that they didn't win off spawn, but they've grown into the day, they've grown into the games, and they've been able to find themselves in a decent enough position now. But as we spoke about in the last game, it's all about those sort of mid-game fights where they've been struggling a little bit. The off-spawn situation has been looking good for them. You can see this Axforce a little bit further back from his teammates, and Bevy's just easily able to connect with a shot onto Ewig, who have put up a good fight. It's not been completely easy for them, but nicely done from them.
Maxi King trying to go for the double revive instead. Tim and his trio that are looking to be completely eliminated. Sure enough, Sake, Veek, and Adrix will be the surviving members here at Flooded Frogs, but trouble on the horizon, that's for sure. Another trio already looking to roll in. Voltiac, Siren, and Cool. They have been third-party connoisseurs throughout the course of today, Mini. And the problem for them isn't necessarily finding those early eliminations. It's more so carrying them over into a successful mid and end game.
And remember, this was the drop spot of Gripey, Lubshi, and Prax, so this is where I think a lot of teams see this as an opportunity. Maybe teams that don't necessarily know the area landing here. Maybe teams that don't know the angles at which they can get shot from. You can see Siren, Voltiax, and Cool just trying to take advantage of that right now. Looks as though they are just going to disengage. But Adrix, Veek, and CK, you can see these guys winning off spawn here. It's a nice change of pace. It's a nice change of strategy, potentially, for this team, who are taking advantage of this sort of free drop spot. And you never really know what you're going to expect when there is a team that qualifies through and leaves the drop spot free. Sometimes nobody goes there at all, but other times it can be contested. But for Siren, Voltiax, and Cool, they need a solid performance here as well in this last game.
Did invest a little bit of time in the early game. Still, might not slow them down entirely. Zangi, Rikbor, and Zara. We've seen them have their moments in a handful of these end games, but they want to convert it into a victory royale. They need the points more than ever. A strong fifth lobby finish could prove to be the difference maker here. Winning it outright, obviously the most ideal circumstance, but it starts with just making sure that you can actually get these early game eliminations. And Elise already haven't been collected. Sabari and Roman just trying to do what they can, buy themselves a little bit of time. That pulse scanner, though, not doing them any favors.
Already not. As Zangi, Ritbor, and Zara, these guys need a big game. They need a solid game if they want to get inside of that top 5 consistency.
Up.
Almost a win in terms of points anyway, so they need this big performance for Roman and Elise and Spari. These guys, unfortunately, down on the leaderboard. And it might just be a last chance qualifier situation for them, and it is. No chance of them making it into the top 5. As they're down, they're out. They're going to reconsider now for that LCQ.
A lot of these teams kind of just circling around whatever they might be able to find. Fordoxy, Chino, and Pablo. Fordoxy doesn't want to see his secondary prime, and he's also kind of similar to Pablo, where he doesn't want to sit out the Major 2 finals.
Даже
He
Симон
already
2
experienced that from Major 1, and it's
се
gotta be
каунтс.
a devastating feeling, and especially to be this close right now, Mini. Axe Force, Della, they also find themselves just on the cusp of elimination here if they're not careful. Della, he's got to win his ones though, up against Abdul. Abdul just continuing to crank upwards, continuing to maintain a steady overhead position. Get some nice tags. The distance there onto Della, that's going to force him to drop for a moment, but Della fighting back. Abdul, having lost his shield entirely, is going to be forced to come to a pause here. Unfortunately, the damage has already been done. Axe Force having been claimed, but Baha, Convec, and Mixon have made themselves known. This is their exchange to win out.
This whole fight has just been deja vu. We've seen Abdul and company fighting against Axel, Stella, and Bevies all day, and it's just been the story of Axel, Stella, and Bevies this whole day, losing out on these fights after they went off spawn. And then we see Convec, Blaha, and Mixon again just running through the entire lobby, trying to find as many stragglers as possible because they know they're already qualified through. But for Della, this is a huge, huge moment for them. I think they do need a win in order to qualify. So all hope on their qualification to the Major 2 finals does lie with Della right now. You can see him just being
Не
very,
знам
very
колко
sneaky,
FPS ще
not
ти
too
вари.
sure
То няма
how
как да се прецени
what
изобщо.
Blaha, Mixon and Convec know. I don't think they know anything really about his position. I don't even think they know he's still here. They might just think, oh, he's run away, try to rotate out. They're really trying their best. This is a very, very difficult situation. And the best part is that they can do this. They've already got an elimination. They don't even if they go down now, it doesn't really matter. They're able to spend a little bit of extra time here, and I think it's only a matter of time they find Della because they're looking towards this area. How is he still in this, Della? What is he doing? This could be the moment they look back on as a potential tide turner for their entire season if Della manages to make this one out and end up getting the reboot. This is difficult.
Every little bob. Della just trying to keep his head above water here. Mixon thought for a moment that he'd noticed, but Convec, Blaha, they're both just going to circle back around onto Salty Dogs. Mixon just continuing to review, make sure that they fully scattered out the area, but Della somehow, some way manages to survive. The damage may have already been done here though, Mini, because even if he makes his way out, so much time has been spent just hiding that even if he is able to make a reboot play, his team is going to be so heavily hindered for their mid to end game.
Big moments here as well for Tidy and Jewel, who have lost Sangild. And this is a team that are inside of that top 5 consistency threshold. So this is every single moment here is so important. I always think of Tidy as like a player that's sort of upcoming, but he's been in grand finals before, all the way back in Chapter 2, Season 8. So he'll be looking to make his first finals since then. Grand finals, that is. So longevity personified right there. But for Flixi, Veno, Vico, this is a huge fight for them. We saw them earlier on picking up 3 eliminations. They need to find this one if they have any hope of ensuring that they're inside of that top 5. You see Veno looking from the behind, really nice shots, really nice cleanup from that fight. I think it was only a duo in the end in Fury and Craig, but really nicely done from this team who really setting themselves up for success in this last game here, Taco. Sometimes teams can just back down if they need just a sort of top 5 situation maybe, or even just a top 10 to qualify. It may even be less for this team. They can sort of back down, sort of stay inside of their shell, if you like, and not go and play the way that they know they can play and will play. But this team are different. They know what they can do. They know their skill above the rest of the lobby. They're putting it on display for us.
They're just so good at corralling players into the exact line of sight that they want to take advantage of. It's going to take a lot more than that, though, for a team like Ivcho, Kaio, and Turtle. Takata kind of touched on it earlier at first lobby. You would think that it was right there for them as far as the victory royale is concerned, but ever since they slipped quite literally off of getting chopped from the high ground in that moment, they've just seemingly struggled to establish their ground anywhere else. And with such seasoned teams like Cammy, Seti, and Hari still at play, makes good sense why some of these other teams can be struggling to be as consistent as they would like. Harry Seti and Cammy though, just chopping out somebody else's surge base, no big deal.
Мог бе.
Previously, doing that exact same type of bait in that exact same position, so someone's been doing their homework.
Всички в топ 10 са живи.
Seti, Hari, and Cammy, they're quite happy just to let that fight go, or that surge base get chopped. They can get a couple of extra tags there onto Momsy, it was, who was of course boxed up outside there. It does seem like they've repositioned
Да
themselves at
Хрис,
Seaport
какво
City,
значи да те кача?
which they have to say is their home.
Що не играеш? Защото е
And not an ideal situation
за
if they do
финалисти.
qualify to the major two finals, because Queasy is still there. And he will remain there, I'm sure. But for Wox, Ping, and Malabuka, huge game for them. The nerves must be a little bit high for this team right now. 160 points going into this last game. Historically, last week, I think it was 204 was what qualified teams through. So this is a massive game for them. I mean, I don't doubt they would win in an LCQ format, right? When it comes down to their ability, but you just don't want to leave it up to that chance. You never know what can happen on the day. You never know who's going to be contesting you, what the lobby's going to look like, what the zones are going to do, even how you're feeling as a team. It's such an important game for them in terms of their potential for this season.
When a group is as stacked as this one, though, there's bound to potentially be an upset or two. Granted, that's one of the last teams that I would ever look towards in terms of not being able to confirm their spots on the battle bus for the Major 2 Finals. But Momsy and Alex Skyjump trying to make themselves known. Recently evicted from Seaport City, now trying to be tenants yet again. Sila, Enix, and Pump, though, they're not trying to let it go for free by any means. Sila just gonna have to reposition here. Andalex and Skyjump, though, they've already been knocked. It's only Mumsy trying to fight back, trying to break through. Instead, totally collapsed on, though. Nowhere left to run, and a huge upset for Mumsy's team. They're probably hoping that having former familiarity here at this drop, it would have boded a bit better for them, but shut down by Sila and Enix's trio. That is just, it's a tough break.
Really is, yeah, not ideal at all. And I'm sure teams that would have been contested by Momsy and company, they'll be leaving for joy right now, but maybe that could happen still in the LCQ for them. It's not over, of course, for those that don't know. It is, of course, there is an opportunity, 3-game final in the last chance qualifier next week for 3 teams and 3 only. 3 Victory Royale winners to make their way into the Major 2 finals. So for anyone that hasn't qualified, there's still hope, although it's best to get it done here, Taco. This is the time to do it. 1 win in this lobby.
Ние в
Even just
колко
the top
почва?
5 is what will do it. As for Tidy and Jewel, we saw these guys without Sangild earlier, and they have now picked him back up, which is nice to see. And as I spoke about earlier, this is a team that are inside of that sort of threshold, so they need a solid game here. They need that consistency to come through. No eliminations as of yet, so you have to imagine their storm surge is going to be a little bit lower, but with less teams in the lobby, it's less of a concern as of right now in these early stages of the game, so they can afford to be a little bit more passive at this stage.
Брате, един път не са ма коментирали те с Fortnite.
Look like some issues
Един път.
as far as
Никой път не мога да мейкнем, бате, ще бъде FNCS да ме коментират и мене. Да нагледат тука. Да ми коментират името по някакъв друг начин, но не и Ивчо.
When it comes to that consistency metric,
Май никога няма коментират, бате.
gotta be real careful with some of these peaks. It's just a return fire across the way, causing such a huge threat.
Тука пред 20 000 човека да те гледат.
A
different breed.
It is very easy to kind of let your mind get away from you and sort of start to imagine that kind of losing scenario. So a lot of mental force taken for granted here. I think that some of these players just knowing how to deal with those kinds of circumstances, a little bit of experience, and that's definitely the kind of caliber that I think CCB and Nathan fall into.
Yeah, I think so. They've got to place their strengths at this point. If they feel like they maybe haven't had the best day, they're not looking for so many eliminations to get their Storm Surge sort of boxed up in 2 different Surge towers there. For Axforce, Bevies, and Della, this is a team that we know have struggled, and it looks as though Della has actually been able to pick up Axforce and Bevies. So remember when he was sort of camping and sat inside of that water, managed to finally pick them both up via reboot. Of course, that will mean that th've lost their Storm Surge damage that they
И Вълкъв стол тапа има, бе.
Axforce and Bevy, so it's only Della's that they're
Те
going
са на ръба на зоната ли
to
какво?
right now. So although
Май
it's
не.
looking better, it's still not perfect for that trio who still need a really good game in order to qualify through. For Faded, Bendy and Tex, this is a team that we've seen all spawn at Foxy, have some success, but no, just as we were saying, how things are looking okay for Della, Axforce and Bevies. Axforce is down, and it's down to Bevies and Della to clutch up. Inside of this building, it's Blaha, Comeback and Mixon, the team that everyone's trying to find right now. As Della hits
Ей, делата.
it's not quite enough, albeit a huge
Делата, ако беше му стрелна обрат.
This is a huge fight for Bevies. Can he keep his team alive? Can he keep his team in contention for the Major 2 finals as another team rotates on through? The third party is here. The decision has to be made from Bevies right now, and he is just sitting back. He needs this game. This could be a season-defining moment for Bevies, and maybe this third party is just the saving grace that he needs.
Comeback, on the other hand, not going to be able to wiggle his way out of this one. But it's the fact that it was Comeback, Blaha, and Mixon trying to
Губят
finish what
си...
they had started essentially with the way that
Губят
they
си Маша и
shaped
Соротема,
out
макар че
Bevies'
кланаха.
trio over by Salty Dogs,
Comeback,
and
Blaha и
now
Mixon.
still making sure to be the thorn in the side here. Della doing just enough though. The fact that Bevies is still kicking does prove to be at least a little glimmer of hope for this trio. It is just so difficult to begin to imagine, though, the way that this is essentially unfolded for them in Game 5. Bevy's hoping that he can go for the reboot yet again, but it doesn't seem as if Abdul, YZY, or Buzz are going to stick around long enough to find out what happens next.
This is a trio that has had almost the most reboots out of everyone. I'm sure there's a stat about it, but they just seem to have always been in this situation where one or two of them are down and they're having to clutch, and you can only do that so many times. So Bevies right now is going to have to yet again get another reboot going, and as I mentioned, they're going to lose all of that damage that they had on the other players. So it's just climbing over a mountain and then seeing there's another one to climb over again. It's just not ideal for them. We saw Vico Flixie getting really active. Really nice zone pull here as well for them here in the 6th zone.
But как винаги го правят тия спортата, бе. Те едни и също само.
Commanding the rest of the lobby. They have some extra heals inside of this box as well. So for a team that just needs a solid game at this point with these number of eliminations, they've set themselves up in the perfect way, and the zone is playing in their favor as well, which is nice to see.
Sitting a little bit closer to the low ground, though. Alray trying to get some nice shots to connect, but Foxy Floodgate. You'd expect some teams to encounter some difficulties trying to make their way over some of these mountains, especially when you have to deal with the likes of other teams rotating in, like Malambuka, Ping, and Walks. But Bala, Twy, got a pretty set position here as Seti, Hari, and Cammy. They just want to get inside of the zone. That's all they're really after. And it's going to cost them a decent amount of material, but they have so many builds to work with. It's not an issue just yet.
Yeah, and they also don't need much from this game. They're just on the brink of being pretty much confirmed. 198 points going into this last game. So they really don't need much. They just need to secure it. They don't need to do anything too crazy in terms of aggression. They can just sit back and do what they do best, which is sort of consistently and making the end games. We saw Cammy there just overbuilding, making sure that they weren't going to get beamed and focused, because it's so easy to have that, especially in these lobbies where teams are just looking for any opportunity, any opening. Everyone has to be so opportunistic, and that's what everyone's looking right now. As Sangild, Jewel, and Tidy are looking for this opportunity to pick up some more damage, maybe a refresh as well. They're just spraying on through. All these other teams are just trying to get in as well. There's just so many different boxes, next door neighbors, people around that are trying to get themselves inside of this zone. Everyone next to you has the same goal of trying to get in, but then once they do, they're not friends with you anymore. They're looking back, they're trying to spray and prevent your team from getting through. All the teams on height as well. There's massive surge bases. They're not helping whatsoever, but for Jewel, Tidy, and Sangil, they're still not quite in the zone. Just about managed to get in there with a little bit of metal, but expended so many materials there.
The other issue is that they have essentially just been sandwiched inside of that edge of zone. It's going to be very difficult for them to even make their way out of where they've last based up. Same can't be said, though, for Seti, Hari, and Cammy.
Invest a little bit of
farm materials early on, but for good reason. Got a set position now to just kind of harass some of these other players looking to break through. For Doxy, Chino, and Pablo, they can't afford to go down just yet. They're trying to see if they can get a good refresh. They notice the body loot left over from Siren. They're going to try to be the first ones to go and collect it. But from the sidewall, Fordoxy never saw it coming, lost his shield entirely, nearly a disaster. But he will manage to skirt his way out of danger for the time being. Voltiax, though, guarding that body loot as much as he can.
You can see Fordoxy just being a little bit naive, if you like, with how all of those builds there were just not theirs. They didn't have the edit control over all those builds, so you didn't place those builds, you didn't replace anything, and that's ultimately what can happen. But again, Jewel, Tidy, Sangul, they made their way in. They need to go in just a little bit further to solidify them inside of this next zone. They are above the Storm Surge threshold as well, but they're still looking for as many tags as possible. It's the team that do need a good performance. They're inside of that top 10 situation in terms of that leaderboard. Of course, top 5 getting you into the Major 2 finals. So such a big moment for that trio. They need just to squeeze as many placements out as possible, pick up a couple of the limbs here and there as well whenever they can. Kami, Seti, Hari, these guys can just ride out all of their materials, ensure that they just make it as far as possible. As there are a couple of teams rotating right next to them, so many shooting in the back as well. Is there a team that does have the Storm Surge, so they don't need to look for anything in particular? They can transport their way a path through. That was beautiful.
Absolutely lighting up CZB on that mountainside. You want to be greedy with that elevated position, but you have to remember just how many teams are actually keeping that same mentality in mind. Ping walks Malabuka, though, elevated just slightly over the rest of this lobby, but they're at the base of somebody else's surge base. Veno, Vico, Flixie, potentially overhead. For Doxy, though, he's lost Chino. A little bit of panic possibly coming into play here, but the double revive might be successful. A huge break for Pablo and for Doxy. But still, they've got to continue working their way, wrapping around the bottom of this mountain face. Fordoxy doing what he can to tarp through. Just so many teams surrounding them, though, looking to cut them off. And Fordoxy, sure enough, one direction. It's all it takes.
Продължават да са на хай.
Veno, Vico, and Flixie all too happy, though, to be in this elevated position on the high ground. Just the luxury of spraying everybody underneath them. But Chino, Pablo, it's the end of the road here in Game 5, Mini, and everything's going to depend on how everyone else's performance is.
Yeah, I don't know if there's going to be enough. I think they ended on about sort of 140 something, 150 points. Not quite going to be enough for that trio, but for Vico, Veno, control this whole lobby. They had so much material spare. For Jewel, Tidy, and Sangul, a similar situation what we've seen from some of our other teams. So many teams in this lobby are just sort of on that border. They're trying to retain their position inside of that top 5.
Те двете верно плават за граница.
In these moments to play these end games and play out as many of their materials as possible of all the other teams that need it as well. Max, Malabuka, Wox, and Ping. This is a team that also need it. They just need to stay consistent here. They have that Storm Surge damage in the threshold, looking really good. 700 above that. And they still have a decent amount of materials as well to continue plowing on through this end game. Every single move that these teams make right now just has that increased importance. The risk that they take have that increased riskiness to them, but for not much longer for Veno, Vico, and Flixie, as they're just all the way up on height. They're able to control the rest of the lobby. Not too many risks for them right now.
And the problem for Wox, Malabuka, and Ping is that they're smack dab straight in to Seti, Kami, and Hari on the low ground, trying to control that front-sided position. But the real issue, they needed a refresh.
Фликси, той умира, обаче няма значение, май клават те вино. Вино си клават, мисля, че. Anyways. Оу, какъв нок на беби. Сети умират, ама те и те са клава. Обаче е много клоуз, много ще е клоуз. Между другото. Аре, Вокс умира.
side of the storm hits a huge shot, but it's not enough as Wox now goes down. They need the experience of Malibuka now to clutch up as many placements as they possibly can. Only 4 eliminations for them, so they are going to need every one of these placement points that they can get from this game. Huge moments that could send this team into the Major 2 finals. Likewise with Nathan and Eclipse now as a duo. This is a team that also can do it as well in these final few moments, just outside of that top 5 going into this game. This is surely going to send them in if they can continue with this plowing on through the rest of the lobby.
But take a look at what's happening in the low ground. ADN, Michael Hardfine, we knew that they had to go absolutely nuclear in this final
Малюбка доста коча.
match. So many issues throughout the course of the day.
Не там умират. Вино все още живеят с Вико. Мога да уйнат. Тия джуите са 216 точки.
No builds remain currently for Sangild. Looking behind him, it's ADN, Michael, Hardfine. They're closing in. They see the opportunity. They've got one knock. Can they get the other?
Jul като соло.
He's the last member standing.
О, взе сайфа. Вико и Вино, братле, какво правят като на хай? Не бавят.
Can they take this final game? As it looks like Zara, Zangi and Rickball are the only team that is still standing as a full trio. So Veno and Vico are going to try their very best now to close out this game. Jewel is still alive as well. So it can be done. A solo clutch is possible. And Vico also now needs a solo clutch too.
But Vika still has to worry about what's taking place directly underneath it. 1 versus 3 million. It is never easy to try and actually confirm these Jewel.
Някакъв рандом тим уинна, бе, брат. За Grand Finals. Велик бор някакви. Я да видим. Кой отива на Grand Finals? Кой отива на Grand Finals? Let's see. Let's see. Тъй. Тези, където не ги знаехме кои са. Нямаше да колонът от консистенси, мисля, че. Така. Комбек, Блаха, Миксън. Знаехме за тях, Вико. Знаехме Сити, знаехме Сангио, Тири, Джули и топ 10 отива при Пинк Вокс и Малибука с 202 точки точно зад тях. Eclipse и Нейтън 177, даже не било клоус. 29 point gap бат. Леле, даже 31 точка, не 29. Ело. Три докси, от и да бяха направили тези Team-Ове, нямаше да е клоус. 202 точки, бъртле. За клоу. Малибука точно топ 10. Го клоуват. Имат само една лоша игра. Добре, че курчнаха тази игра, мисля, че беше или е та... Не май беше та топ 8. Много точки взеха. Ако не бяха взели тези точки, тук можеше те да са 11. О май гот. Еми, доста добри Team-Ове не мейкват гранс, ама такова е положението. Ливше не са изиграли даже. Една от тирите не са влезнали. Това е бил един тим, който не са влезнали в игра.